Hello, and welcome to Canyon Professional Development. During this session, we will be talking about the power of relationships and how that relates to classroom management. My name is Carolyn Mann, and I will be facilitating this session. During this session, we are going to reflect on the importance of a strong student-teacher relationship and identify strategies for building those relationships. We are also going to reflect on the purpose of consequences and how to be a likable teacher while setting high expectations. You're going to have time to determine if your classroom expectations are what they need to be, and you're going to be able to determine what routines and procedures you will need to establish in order to be successful. Let's start off with a quote by Harry Wong. This quote states, "An effective teacher manages the classroom, an ineffective teacher disciplines the classroom." I want you to think about that as we navigate through this session. As a substitute teacher, you walk into the unknown on a regular basis. Maybe you're just doing a day-to-day sub job where you're walking into a brand new classroom. Maybe you are doing a long-term substitute position where you are going back for your third, fourth, fifth day or week. Whichever it might be, we need to keep this quote in mind. As a teacher, you need to manage the classroom effectively. If you are not doing that and being proactive, you're going to spend all of your time disciplining students in the classroom. So think about that as we go through the content. I want you to consider, what will you take away today? Whether you know you're going back to a classroom for the second week tomorrow, or you're starting a new assignment in a brand new classroom, whichever it might be, what can you take away to elevate your teaching to the next level and to support the students you will be working with? We start with class norms and rules. I want you to think, if I were to ask you, what enhances your learning experience versus what hinders your ability to learn? We could spend time together coming up with answers to each of these questions. When you enter a new classroom, if it's going to be a short-term assignment, maybe a day or two, oftentimes the classroom teacher will already have classroom norms and rules established. It's important that you find out what those are immediately. However, I also encourage you, I challenge you to take 5 minutes out of the day to also ask students these two questions. Now, if you're working with younger students, you can definitely make these age appropriate. For example, we might say, what makes learning fun? Or what makes it to where you can't learn? So you can reword them how you want, but spend 5 minutes asking these two questions. So for example, if that you said as the teacher, what enhances your ability to learn? And a student were to respond, when I get to work with my friends. Wonderful. There you go. The teacher might already have this rule, but if not, then I'd write it on the board. That sounds great. That means we will work cooperatively with others. You've created the very first rule. Maybe go on to take some other answers from students. Choose 2, 3, 4 at most that you want to add to your list, because that way students will be buying in to not only the classroom rules, but the rules that you have established for your short or long-term time in that classroom. Now, if you're going to be staying, once again, you might have walked in to some classroom rules and expectations. However, I challenge you to look over them and to go back through that exercise I just shared with you. If you're going to be there for multiple weeks, absolutely try to stay as close to the teacher's rules and norms as possible so that when they come back, it won't be a whole new routine for students to learn. However, feel free to once again create a couple more, or maybe create another way to display those rules so that they are up front and center if they are not already. Rules and expectations should be living, breathing documents in the classroom. They should be documents or things that students are able to manipulate on a daily basis. For example, I will show you some expectations that I've created. After doing the activity where I asked what hinders their learning experience or what supports their learning experience, and listening to answers, I came up with these expectations that I was able to share in the classroom the very next day. As the teacher, I created these. However, if I'm working with older students, this could be a fun assignment. Ask them, would anybody like to come up with a creative way to display these at the front of the classroom? So you are welcome to figure out what works best for you. You'll notice that these are very, very simple. They're short and students will be able to remember them, because what is the purpose of having rules or expectations if students don't remember them? Because the whole purpose is to have them recall the rules and expectations so that they choose the appropriate behaviors. In addition, when you're using rules or consequences and they're displayed like this, where students can manipulate them, they can be put on strings, they can be hung in the front of the room. Maybe you choose to share one a day after you've established them. Maybe you have rule monitors who wear the rule of the day. Younger kids really enjoy doing this, and they remind students throughout the day, don't forget expectation number 3, you're supposed to come prepared, take out your stuff, whatever it might be. Bringing these rules up from day to day and incorporating them into your everyday routine helps students remember them, and it helps them follow them. So remember, rules are not something that you just place on the wall after sharing them the first week of school. They are something that you will reference on a regular basis. The other thing I'd like you to consider is that if your rules or norms or expectations aren't working for you, there is nothing that says you can't make changes as needed. So please don't think just because you've created them that you can't come back and say, my friends, I've noticed that some people aren't getting to work right away after being given assignments. I think we might want to think about how that hinders everyone's learning experience. We could talk about it, and then we could come up with the verbiage for another rule stating that all students will get to work immediately after being given an assignment. We can add to our rules. We can take away. Maybe we notice that it's a rule that we don't need. That is okay too. Now let's think of the flip side of that coin, consequences. The first thing I want you to remember is that consequences are not punitive. This might be very different from how you were raised in the classrooms you were in, and that's okay. It might be a learning curve for you as well. But it is so important to remember that consequences are not punitive. Consequences help students remember rules, policies, and procedures so that everyone can learn. We want our students to understand that. It's not an I gotcha. It's not I want you to be in trouble. It's that everybody needs to learn. And to help you remember the rules and the policies and procedures, we have to have some consequences in place. Maybe you're going to be in a classroom long-term and you've created some rules and now you're thinking, what should my consequences be? You'll often ask around, which is a great idea. Ask your colleagues what their consequences are. Maybe your school has a few consequences that everybody utilizes, and then you can have some of your own. So yes, absolutely check around. But then I want to challenge you to think about consequences in 3 categories and always go back to the why. Why do we have consequences? They're not to be punitive. They're not to say, ha, I gotcha. They are to help students remember the rules so everyone can learn. So the first category I want you to consider is students make amends for their behaviors. So whenever possible, whatever the behavior might be or the action, is the student able to apologize to a classmate, apologize to maybe the lunch person on the playground? Can they apologize to you or somebody else who's been in the classroom that they have been disrespectful to? If they're able to do that, allow them to make amends. It's not directly punishment. We want to make sure that they understand why their behavior was inappropriate. Once they understand that, it becomes innate. They want to apologize, and giving them that opportunity not only helps them move past it, but it'll also help the other person involved. Another example of this would be missing assignments. So I've been to schools where I have seen students not turn in their assignments, and so they might have a punitive consequence, such as sitting on the bench, or maybe sitting on the bench and completing that assignment. I want you to think about something. If you have a student sit on the bench or in a particular spot to finish an assignment where other students are around, How much work is actually getting done? Is that going to make it to where that student is not going to miss another assignment? I highly doubt it. So what are some other things we can do? Well, we want to figure out a way to have them turn in that missing assignment because that would be making amends for their behavior. What if they are able to do that with your assistance because maybe they did not finish that assignment because they were confused? Perhaps there's a time where students are working independently and you say, come on up, my friend, you didn't finish that, so I'd like to help you work on that. Make sure you're understanding. At that point, if they do, maybe they can go back and they've already finished the assignment you're working on in class and they have a little time to do that. If they're going to have to do it during a recess or another period of time, make sure that they're doing it in an environment where they know it's not punitive, but it's just they need to get it done because you really need to see if they understand the concepts being taught. Make sure they understand that that's why they need to finish the assignment. And once again, maybe that's in the room with you for just a couple minutes into recess where you're able to help them get through some of the problems, see that they know how to do it, and then allow them to go out and get their energy out, whatever it might be. And also you have to reflect on your school rules and policies as well, especially in regards to things like missing assignments and homework. The next one is temporary timeout to gain control. So when we're thinking about consequences, if maybe they have made amends for their behaviors, or maybe it's something that's going on right now. Can you provide a temporary timeout so that they can gain control? Maybe move them away from the situation. As simple as saying, okay, my friend, I'd like you to go sit next to Susie for a few minutes. Her neighbor is absent, and I think that'll help you take a deep breath and move on. Maybe it's moving them to another quiet area in the classroom because students are reading quietly and they can't seem to focus sitting in their table group. Whatever it might be, if you can provide for them a temporary timeout so they can gain control, that is always very productive. I want to warn, though, do not send students outside of the classroom without supervision. So if little Johnny or Stephanie are having an issue, the last thing we're going to say is, I'd like you to step outside the door and calm down. We can't see what they're doing. That's dangerous for them. That's dangerous for people who might walk by and see a very upset child. So we need to make sure you are not sending students for timeouts where they are not directly under an adult's supervision. The last category here is they must lose a privilege. And some people say, well, isn't that the same as being punitive? Well, yes, they are losing something, but the reason for the loss of privilege is not punitive in that you're saying you're in trouble and this is going to make you sorry for what you did. Instead, it's a natural consequence where they're losing a privilege due to an immediate behavior or action. For example, if I have a friend walking through the hallway and they're toward the back of the line and that's their place in line, that's where they've chosen to be in line. And I notice that they're knocking on doors, disrupting other classrooms. Well, at that point, the best thing for me to do is to take away that privilege of walking in line where you choose. They're now going to have to walk near me. Now, if this is their first offense, I am not going to make this punitive. I'm not going to say, you're going to walk near me and you're going to walk near me for the rest of the year, or you're also going to lose recess. No, I'm simply going to take away the privilege that's directly connected with the misbehavior. Perhaps this could be something to do with seating. You've allowed students to choose their own seats, and you've found out that this particular student is unable to be productive in the seat that they have chosen. Maybe they've chosen to sit in the back of the classroom. After giving them ample opportunity to fix their behaviors, to make amends, to gain control, you notice that they still can't handle the seat they've chosen. At this point, they would lose that privilege. They're not in trouble. It's not punitive. You're simply going to have to take away the privilege of letting them choose their own seat and finding a seat that is more appropriate for them. So if you're going into a classroom and you're determining some consequences, or maybe you're reflecting on the consequences that the classroom teacher that you're working for already has in place, try to figure out which categories do those consequences fall in. If they don't fall into any of these categories and you feel that they're more punitive, how can you try to tweak them while staying as close to what the teacher has asked as possible, but to make your day run more smoothly. If you're going to be there for the long haul, consider tweaking the consequences a bit to make sure that they are falling into these 3 categories or something similar. And also make sure that students understand the why. The why is to help everybody in the classroom learn, not to say, I gotcha. And just to restate it one more time, if there's one thing you walk away with after this session, classroom rules are not simply a decoration. Students should interact with them daily. And this applies to rules and even consequences. The more they interact with them, the more they understand that they are a living, breathing document and something that they, as well as their peers, need to live by. So let's take a minute to consider, how are you feeling today? We hopped right into this session, and now you've had some things to consider. Maybe it's the beginning of the school year. Maybe it's the beginning of a new job that you've accepted. Maybe you're going into this brand new classroom for the next month, and maybe you have something weighing on your mind. I want you to stop this video for a minute. If you're working with somebody else or going through this session with a colleague or a friend, stop the video and talk about what is weighing on your mind in regard to your position, whether it be an upcoming new school year or just a new position for you. If you are not working with somebody else right now, stop the video and jot down a few ideas on a piece of paper. What's weighing on your mind? Let's get them out. Once you have written them down or shared them with a partner, then start the video again. Okay, hopefully you were able to get all of your ideas, all of your worries jotted down. Now, if you're working with others, this is going to be a little bit more fun than if you're working by yourself. However, it still works great even if you're just writing it down. If you're working with partners, you can do a quick think, pair, share. I want you to think about one of your happiest memories. Yes, one of your happiest memories. It does not have to do with school. It can be anything in your life, one of your happiest memories. Once again, you're going to pause the video in just a second. You're going to turn to your shoulder partner and you're going to share that memory. And they're going to share their memory with you. If you're working independently, I would like you to stop the video and jot down on your paper that happiest memory. And after you do that, I want you to take just a couple of seconds to try to close your eyes and envision yourself on that day in that situation. Ready? Enjoy. Okay, welcome back. I hope that something just happened. We know that when we think good thoughts, when we purposefully think good thoughts, that it changes our brain chemistry. It increases that serotonin, that feel-good chemical. So although you had those things weighing on your mind, we flipped the switch. We then started to think about one of the happiest times in our life. And simply thinking about that experience and sharing it with another or writing about it, that automatically turns on that feel-good response. And it can allow us then to go back and concentrate and focus on the task at hand. Well, guess what? That's the same exact thing with your students. So remember, that is a strategy you can use with them. When you come in as a substitute, maybe you're coming in as a guest teacher and their teacher has gone out, maybe something positive, on maternity leave. That's a good thing. However, I guarantee there are students who are anxious knowing that that teacher who they're used to, who they trust, who they've built a relationship with, is going to be gone and somebody new is coming in. They don't know how wonderful you are yet. And they might have some of that anxiety, just like you might have anxiety going into the classroom. One way to get to know your students and to help them turn on the positive thoughts is to be very purposeful in the questions that you ask them. Maybe do a quick think, pair, share just like that. Tell me about one of your happiest memories. Maybe it's, tell me about a time where you succeeded in doing something difficult. You can see I'm very purposeful in the things that I'm asking. I'm not asking, tell me about your weekend. Yes, that could have been good. That could have been bad. No, I'm being purposeful. I want them to talk about something specific that I know is going to bring positive memories and positive feelings. That's going to reset some of that anxiety and the worry that's taking place in their little brains. So that is one activity that you can do with your students. Let's go on to this quote. Life is 10% what you experience and 90% how you respond to it. I bet you everybody can think of somebody in their life right now. Have you ever heard the phrase, is their cup half empty or is their cup half full? How we respond to things and how we teach students to respond to things can make a world of difference. Something might be difficult, but if we respond in a positive manner and we help our students learn to do the same, it can really change things around. In order to do that, I wanted to share with you some mindfulness techniques. They're very simple. They do not take a lot of time, and they are things that you can do to help students find ways to deal with things that they're going through, to find ways to refocus, and to find ways to help them relax and get ready to learn. Because we know if students are preoccupied with other things and thinking about other things and being nervous, it is very difficult for them to sit in a chair and learn what you have to teach. So on here, you're going to see a list of journal prompts similar to the one that I just asked you to talk about with the neighbor. What are your 3 biggest successes? What unique qualities do you possess that make you special? So you can utilize those. You'll also see at the bottom that there are some breathing techniques. Even if you are not somebody who normally practices a variety of breathing techniques, they can be very, very helpful when working with students. We also have this mindful listening technique up here at the top that I suggest you walk through. Now, remember, in order to get students ready for learning, they have to be calm, they have to feel safe, and they have to feel like you're on their side. And they need these strategies to utilize when they begin to feel a little anxious. They're not something that you want to be teaching them when they're already in the moment. So take time throughout your day to utilize some of these. Maybe teach them when kiddos seem to be getting a bit off task, or when your high school students just seem drained. Say, you know what? Let's do a journal prompt real quick, or let's practice some square breathing, because that can really help us calm down and refocus. So you will have access to those in the handout section of the course. So what are your takeaways so far? Is there a strategy or a technique or a tip you can utilize in the classroom immediately? If so, don't forget and give it a try right away. As I've already shared, coming into the classroom as a substitute or a guest teacher can be difficult because you are walking in possibly to a group of students who you do not know. However, that can change very quickly if you walk in with purpose and you're very explicit in the way that you handle things. So build community and foster those relationships. This is a quote by James Comer, who's done a lot of research on the connection between relationships and learning. And he shares that no significant learning occurs without a significant relationship. Remember that, because when you walk in the door, the first second you walk in the door, you need to begin building those relationships. Are you greeting students at the door as they come in and introducing yourself as their guest teacher for the day or for the week or possibly for the next few months? Are you sharing appropriate stuff about yourself? What grades you've worked with in the past, maybe about your personal children, or if you have pets. Students love to learn about pets, and connections can be made very quickly. Are you sharing some of your hobbies? Are you asking them about their hobbies? All of these things quickly help foster the relationships and make students feel as though you're not just another body in the room, but a friend instead. Think about that. What are you currently doing to foster relationships? And what could you do to be a little bit more purposeful in fostering those relationships in the classroom? One great thing that you can do, and it doesn't matter if you're going into a school for the first time, a classroom for the first time, or you're going into a classroom where you've been there a few days before. You can utilize this resource called Padlet. Padlet is free. You can create an account with an email. You just sign up and you are able to create these boards that are digital. You can get codes to share with students or a QR code. You can put questions on there. Here, I put share a memory that stands out from your school experience. This was what I used with teachers, so I put share your name, your years of experience, your school, things like that. With students, you could do the question number 2, a picture of your pet. Maybe it's something that you're going to have them do as an optional homework assignment the first night that you are there to get to know them. This is also something, if they're smaller or younger, you could send home a QR code and parents could go right into this Padlet on their phone and they could actually upload pictures or make comments for the younger students. You could then bring it up on the computer the next day at school and spend time getting to know a couple of students every day. If you've never tried Padlet before, I challenge you, please take time to go to Padlet and to create an account and to give it a try. It is so easy, and I guarantee you won't regret it. We've already discussed how you can begin to create your rules, routines, procedures. Within the handouts, you are going to find 3 documents that I'm going to share with you in a bit. If you want to pause the video and download those at this point, you are more than welcome to do that so that you can refer to them as we go through the next couple of slides. So you've created your rules, your routines, and your procedures, and you have them in place. So, Carolyn, do we need to be enforcing with consequences for every behavior and every action that takes place in the classroom? The answer is no. If you were to do that, you would spend your entire day redirecting, enforcing consequences, and you would be very exhausted. Instead, let's try a couple of other things that can be helpful. Let's think about your goal. Your goal is to quickly and quietly help students get back on task when they are off task without missing a moment of instruction, right? So you want to redirect them without enforcing consequences first. How can you do that? Well, there are a variety of ways that you can do that. You can simply give them redirections. You can say, "Hi, friend, I see that you're a little off task. Let's get back to it." Okay. You can utilize proximity. We know, even as adults, if we're supposed to be doing something and we're not, and whoever is in charge of overseeing what we're doing just gets a little bit closer, it tends to get us right back on track. And it works that way with students, right? So if I'm in the middle of a lesson and I'm reading a story to the students, and I notice that some of them are fidgeting in their desks or playing with their pencil, and they're not following along, I can simply walk over by the student. I can maybe put my hand on their shoulder. Perhaps I'm just going to hover by their desk. Maybe if there's an empty seat, I'm going to have a seat and continue my reading there. Whatever it is, get closer. Let them know that they need to be on task. Another one of my favorites is sticky notes. And even if you're coming in only for a few days, immediately as the guest teacher or the substitute teacher, you can share what your sticky notes mean. Maybe you have pink sticky notes and you can say, "I know your teacher has rules and you have consequences. I am going to utilize another strategy, my sticky note strategy. I have pink sticky notes and I have blue sticky notes. If I come around and I quietly put a pink little sticky note on your desk, that means you need to get back on task. If throughout the day I come around and I put a blue sticky note on your desk, that means, wow, great job staying on task and doing exactly what you're supposed to do." You can share that with them. You can put the 2 sticky notes on the board, write what they mean next to them as a little legend, and utilize them. It's quick, it's easy, and it's something that works with students of any age. And then, of course, we can't forget about that teacher look. We never want to yell. We don't even really have to raise our voice if we are following through and we are establishing those relationships and we are setting the expectations and the consequences. Sometimes all we need is the teacher look. That's where we pause, somebody's off task, we take a look at them and what they're doing, we wait, and then once they notice us looking, we continue on. Now, we don't want to make them embarrassed or put them on the spot and do this for too long. Sometimes a quick glance, when you know that you're in their stream of vision, will get them right back on task. So using that teacher look can be very helpful in a variety of situations. One of my other favorites is making sure that students restate directions or expectations. So if we have gone through a math lesson and students are being asked to now work independently, maybe they're being asked to take out their workbook, tear out page 32, and to show their work on a separate sheet of paper. We might think that's easy enough to follow. However, for our students, it's not always the case. In addition, we might have some friends who weren't paying attention. So I would often go to a student and say, Joey, can you share what we're going to do? Joey would say, we're going to take out our workbook. We're going to take out a piece of paper to write our work on and X, Y, or Z. After Joey said that, I would say, wonderful, thank you. Stacy, can you restate the directions? At first, the students could say, well, Joey just said them. I know, but I want to hear them from you too. She says it. Guess what? I go on to my third student. Third student wasn't listening. They go, I'm not sure. I go, it's okay. You know what? Phone a friend. Ask another student to share. So go to the next student. They say, take out your workbook, take out a piece of paper, etc. And then guess what, though? The last student's not off the hook. You go back to that student and you say, okay, now that you phoned a friend, what did they say? Going through this little routine, it might seem tedious at the very beginning, but I guarantee you it is well worth the 1 minute that it takes to do this, because it gets every student's attention and it lets at least 4 to 5 students in a class restate the directions, which means that you know that they can also answer the questions for their neighbors if their neighbors are unsure about what the directions are. So students restating directions, very powerful. The other thing you can do is discreetly remove distractions. So I'm not going to shout across the room, Billy, you need to put away your eraser, or Angie, please don't fiddle with your pencil. You're not going to do that. Instead, you are going to not miss a beat. You are going to walk over to your friend with the eraser. You're going to take the eraser. You're going to put it on your desk, and they know they will get that eraser back after the lesson, if that's appropriate, or at the end of the day. Simply remove it. Maybe it just goes in your pocket until you're done and you give it back. Maybe it goes on your desk till the end of the day. That is a choice that you get to make. But the more discreetly you do it, the less time you take away from instruction, which is the purpose, right? Do not lose instructional time reprimanding students for small things. Remove distraction, continue on. So if you didn't take time to download these handouts previously, you are going to hopefully do so at some point. So you're thinking, we've already talked about a way to create our classroom rules and consequences. We talked about asking the 2 questions. How can we enhance your learning and what hinders your learning? And yes, that is a great place to start. There are a couple other handouts here, though, that are very important. Now, even if you are a substitute or a guest teacher, you should always be prepared with classroom procedures and policies, whether it be you're going into a classroom for a day or multiple days. The teacher hopefully will have left something like this for you. If they have not, it is not going to catch you off guard. You are going to be able to have an answer when things come up. So I challenge you, take this planning classroom procedures, take the planning classroom policies, and come up with strategies or solutions or how you will handle each of these things. If you were to walk into a classroom and there is absolutely no information there for you, it is going to save you. You will be able to take these documents. You can put them maybe in a report folder or in some paper protectors in a binder that you carry with you from job to job. And you will always have these things here. You can also add some other activities that you might need if the teacher has not been able to leave anything because it was an emergency. As you look through these policies and procedures, you'll notice that they're not all going to apply to every grade level, and that's okay. Normally, as a guest teacher, you go from grade level to grade level. So it's important that you are ready to be in any classroom. Now, if you know you are always only going to do high school or only going to do elementary school, then maybe some of these you can cross out. However, I urge you, I challenge you to go through these and think, what am I going to do about handling emergencies? Well, maybe you put, don't forget when you get in to find the emergency backpack and to make sure that you have a class list in case of emergencies. That's a reminder for you. Maybe at the beginning of class, if the teacher hasn't left anything, you always have a go-to. You use maybe one of those journaling activities I shared with you. Okay, have that ready. How are you going to collect work from students? If no student is able to tell you how they normally hand in their work, what is your routine going to be? Are you going to have somebody collect the work? Are you going to have them pass work up, collect it in table groups? Have things in mind. These things sound so little, but they can really make things go awry. So if you are ready and you already have procedures and policies and plans in place, everything will go much smoother. So take time to look over the procedures, the policies, and even the classroom rules and consequences sheet, because it does help to reflect on a couple of things that we did not touch on. So a lot of information. What are your takeaways? The next time you get a new assignment, whether it be for a day or multiple days, how are you going to ensure you're prepared for any situation that you walk into? Are you going to prepare with the policies and procedure handouts that I have shared? Maybe you're going to go in with the questions, what enhances your learning experience or what hinders your learning experience, to every classroom, just in case you need to start there. So take a look at the handouts, take a look at the slide deck, and determine what resources are you going to utilize immediately. Now, I want to share something fun with you. If you have an opportunity to be in a classroom long term, teachers are always asking, well, I also like to do incentives and rewards. One of my favorite incentive reward systems I used in my classroom was called I Lost My Sense. This can be used throughout a whole semester, or if you know you're only going to be there for perhaps 2 weeks or a month, it could be modified for that amount of time. And I guarantee that students, whether grade K or grade 6 or even grade 8, would be very interested and enjoy something like this. So what you see here are little sheets with 3 pennies on them. Yes, I actually made copies of these, and each student gets a copy of these on a daily basis. Now, if this is something that you're going to do in middle school, I have had teachers make index cards where they put the pennies on the index cards and laminated them so that they could use a dry erase daily to do this exercise so that they could be reused. However, it does work really well for younger kids if they're able to physically have the little pieces of paper. It's not work for you because you can simply print them up and have a monitor pass them out to everybody on a daily basis. When you pass them out, students learn immediately that they need to put their name on the back and try to do it with something that can't be erased, because if it gets lost or taken, it cannot be replaced. So here you can see the directions for this activity. So let's pretend you're going to be there for a month. You would introduce this to them, and you would send a letter home to their parents as well, explaining how this system works. So they receive the cent sheets daily. And if they break a classroom rule or need to be redirected too many times, they have to cross out a cent or a penny on their cent sheet. If they cross out all 3 in one day, they get a little note sent home to their parents. And I'll share that with you in a second. Very simple. If they just cross out 1 or 2 pennies, it's a warning. But it is a deterrent, because on the flip side, if they don't cross out any cents, they get to put it in their wallet, in their cent sheet wallet. I allowed them to make a wallet using some construction paper and tape. They absolutely loved it. This was 5th graders. So I tell you, it doesn't matter the age, they love this stuff. Whatever scent sheets they have that they haven't crossed anything out, that goes in their wallet. Now, at the end of your month, you could say the grand finale is going to be a scent sheet auction or like a flea market, however you want to run it. The beauty of this is that you are not going to be bringing in things to be auctioned off or to be sold at their stations. They are going to be bringing the majority of the stuff in. As the teacher working with students for the whole year, the very last quarter, I also brought in a couple of things. If you want to bring in a couple of things, that's fine. If you don't, that's fine too. Believe it or not, they're so excited because they get to buy things from their fellow students. Now, I share with parents and students, these do not need to be things that they've bought. They can be small things from their home. They can be the bouncy ball that they no longer want. They can be a baseball card. And I also share with parents that they have to approve of whatever they're bringing. You would be amazed at what kiddos will do for somebody's old stuff. Remember the saying, one man's junk is another man's treasure. That applies to kids too. It works great. So take a look and read through these directions carefully. And hopefully this is something that might work for you at some point. I shared that if a student happens to cross out all 3 scents, which I will tell you over a span of about 5 years, I probably only had maybe 5 students who ever got that far. This was one of my most successful incentive techniques. So here it says, I lost my scents today. Dear parents, this note is being sent home to inform you that blank, the student's name, lost his or her scents today. There's a play on scents. He or she blank. So what did they do? Really quick. It was so easy for me as the teacher. I would staple their crossed off scent sheet to it, send it home with them. The parent sent it back. In the letter I originally sent home or email I sent home to share about this strategy that I was using in the classroom, I shared what they needed to do and that they needed to talk to their child if they ever got a note like this sent home. It worked seamlessly. Parents loved it. Students loved it. And I loved it most of all because it was very easy for me to manage and it worked very well as an incentive for all of my students. So take a look. You will find that in the handout section. Here we have a quote by Julia G. Thompson. She is the author of a great book called Beyond Surviving, Thriving in the First Year of Teaching. And it says, a well-managed classroom is the outcome of a series of intentional choices made by the teacher who has the imagination to predict student behavior and to create a reassuring framework to guide students. This is something that is so important to remember. You have to be very intentional in your choices when you walk into a classroom, especially as a substitute or guest teacher. It is a different ballgame. You need to make sure that you are going in and you have made intentional choices as to how you're going to handle situations before you're put in them. You need to use your imagination to predict student behaviors and to create frameworks that are going to work regardless of if you're in a 3rd grade classroom or a 6th grade classroom. And hopefully some of the strategies that I've shared with you today are going to help you do that and make it just a little bit easier. Here, you're going to see an activity. This is something that if you are working in small groups or you would like to do later with a group, you are more than welcome to download. And you will find links here to YouTube videos that talk about a variety of different topics that you can debrief and reflect on with colleagues. So a little classroom management, intentional choices. There's a great video in here about the continuum of engagement, understanding student behaviors. And then something new to all of us is ChatGPT in the classroom. So there are just a few more resources here that you will find and you might want to take a look at. If you are working in small groups, I would encourage you to break up to watch these various videos and then to maybe do a carousel activity, which is another great activity to use in the classroom. A carousel is where perhaps you're in a social studies classroom and you're reading a chapter. Instead of asking kids to sit quietly and read that chapter on their own, which we know probably won't be very engaging and some students might not be so successful. Instead, you can have them break into groups, read a short portion of that chapter, maybe a page or two, and then you can have them Share out with the rest of the class what they read in their section, and everybody can take notes. You can also have them write notes on a large chart paper, and you can have them hang them around the room, and kids can visit each of the groups and learn what their portion of the chapter was about. Great way to increase student engagement and to really have students buy into the content being shared. That's called a carousel activity. So, what are your takeaways? Are you going to attempt a carousel activity? Are you going to be prepared when you walk in the classroom with those procedures and with those policies? Maybe you're going into a long-term assignment and you're going to give I Lost My Sense a try. Whatever it is, take a look, get to know it, and be ready. Being prepared is one of the biggest keys to success, along with building relationships. Meet those students at the door with a smile and start getting to know them right away. Once again, here are those handouts for you. You will find them in the handout section of the course. It's time to get started. It's time to look over all the documents, and remember, every day is a new day, a new chance, a new opportunity. Who says teaching is stressful? I'm 39 and I feel fine. Wanted to leave you with a laugh, produce a little more serotonin, and send you off on your way to be successful substitute teachers. What tools are you taking away? I hope you found this session helpful. Please remember to download the handouts and start preparing. Thank you for joining Canyon Professional Development.